Hello everyone. Welcome to the Future Founders Program Roadshow, coming to you virtually today. To begin, I acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and extend such respect to all First Nations people who are participating from other nations or territories. My name is Ingrid, and I'm the events producer of StartSpace. StartSpace is a business support service for very early stage founders and ideas to learn and connect with new skills. Thank you for joining us today for this event as part of the 2021 Study Melbourne Future Founders Program in partnership with StartSpace, powered by the State Library of Victoria. Future Founders is Australia's biggest entrepreneurship program for international students and represents a $500,000 investment by the Victorian government to support the COVID recovery of the sector under the International Education Short-Term Recovery Plan. The program will also engage international students offshore through Victoria's innovative new Study Melbourne Hubs initiative. Hello to those viewers tuning in via the Hubs. Last year, we presented a completely online festival across 5 days. In 2021, we have an expanded year-long program of events and activities delivered in person at State Library of Victoria, alongside many virtual opportunities so that our international participants can join in from wherever they are. We welcome you to learn and connect through these opportunities, build your skills and networks, and come with a curious and open mind to see where this journey takes you. Now, let's move on to today's speakers and presenters. We'll shortly have Fiona Letos, Global Victoria's Director of International Education, sharing some messages to kick off today's event. After that, we'll have Priyanka Ashraf, founder of the Creative Co-operative, and Belle Lim, convener of the Future Female Conference, for a short in-conversation about Priyanka's journey as a founder. Following, we'll have a workshop presented by Sakshi Thakur, founder of Humanism Global, to introduce you to the process of business ideation and the concept of a value proposition canvas. We hope you enjoy today's session and learn something new through the discussion and workshop activity. I'd now like to pass on to Fiona Letos, Director of International Education from Global Victoria, to share a few words. Fiona, thank you very much for joining us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ingrid, and hi everyone. It's absolutely fantastic to be here with you this afternoon. My name is Fiona Letos. I am the Director of International Education at Global Victoria, and again, it's my absolute pleasure to be here with you today. I also would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Victoria, acknowledging their connection to land and water, and of course, pay my respects to elders past and present, and also would like to acknowledge the elders from other communities who may be here today. So it's my absolute honour to welcome you all to the virtual Future Founders Roadshow. And this is the final community roadshow in a series that we have delivered across Victoria, including Melbourne, Ballarat and Geelong. And what makes today particularly special is that we are joined by many international students offshore, as well as students from across regional Victoria, making this virtual roadshow the largest and most accessible to our student community. And we're also joined by students in our newly established Study Melbourne Hub in Shanghai, which is a beautifully designed and inclusive space where today's event is also being screened live. So a very warm wu an to all the students and the team at the Hub in Shanghai. And to all our offshore students, we're delighted you could be here today. And of course, we look forward to welcoming you back to Victoria very, very soon. So last week, the Victorian government announced through the state budget $50.9 million over 4 years to continue to support international students and the international education sector. So this funding will see delivery of our Study Melbourne Hubs continue. It will also see the expansion of our global education network, and it will shore up and enable us to continue and strengthen our international student support programs through employability and empowerment initiatives. And so the Study Melbourne Empowered program is a targeted and strengths-based program celebrating international students as globally connected, focusing on employability, entrepreneurship, leadership, and social capital. And this program includes, firstly, our employability and job support program, Career Catalyst. It also includes our highly successful international student leadership program called Leadership Labs. And it also includes our Confidence Crew South Asia, which is our social wellbeing and resilience program, which was actually launched earlier today by the Governor of Victoria, which is a fantastic event. And that program is really aiming to show solidarity with students in India and across the region. But of course, the Future Founders program is our flagship entrepreneurship investment. It's designed to introduce students to Victoria's startup ecosystem and increase your skills and networks for you to actively work on starting up a new business. And it's Australia's biggest entrepreneurship program that is exclusively for international students. And as Ingrid mentioned, it represents a $500,000 investment by the Victorian government. And this is part of our International Education Short-Term Recovery Plan. And this program builds on the very highly successful Future Founders Festival, which saw around 1,800 students register and over 40 high-profile speakers across a wide range of topics, including diversity and inclusion, social impact, and industry and government collaboration. And this year we've expanded the program to include continuation of one of the biggest international student hackathons. It also includes intensive boot camps and Australia's first international student incubator with $10,000 in venture scholarships on offer for up to 8 startup teams. So we'd of course very much encourage you to sign up now if you haven't already. And this program is underpinned by research and a very strong demand from students for developing skills in entrepreneurship. Students want to establish their own startups and they're looking for opportunities to start a business, linking Australia back to their home country. So we're partnering again with the State Library of Victoria's StartSpace. And this partnership, I think, highlights Victoria's and Melbourne's competitive advantages as a premier study partner, including the ability for students to access the state's creative industries and Melbourne's $7 billion startup sector. So we're really pleased with the success of the community roadshows delivered over the last month. These have developed new industry partnerships and have helped to change the conversation around the entrepreneurial talent and innovation of our international students. And as Ingrid also mentioned, students offshore can connect to our programs through the Study Melbourne hubs. Our Shanghai hub is of course now open, and we have 2 new physical hubs in Kuala Lumpur and Ho Chi Minh City, which will be launching very soon. And we have virtual hubs coming online for India and Latin America. And the hubs are a really great way to come together physically and virtually for students to network, collaborate, and innovate. But we're here today to talk about female entrepreneurship. So later this afternoon, you're going to hear from some very inspiring women in business leaders, including the founder of Victoria's Future Female Conference, Belle Lim. And Belle's going to be talking about unlocking the power of female entrepreneurship. And in addition to working with Belle across many of her leadership roles and being in awe of her amazing achievements, I'm also very proud to be working with a number of very talented women leaders within the Victorian government. We're really proud that in our offshore international network, we have 2 incredible female commissioners for Victoria. So those commissioners are Ms. Michelle Wade, she's the Commissioner for Victoria to South Asia, and Ms. Rebecca Hall, who is the Commissioner for Victoria to Southeast Asia. And both are very committed to supporting all international students to reach their full economic and entrepreneurial potential. And as you all know, Victoria is one of the most open and progressive societies for women in business and government, with our state leading the way nationally through gender equality and women's leadership. So empowering women and celebrating their entrepreneurialism is something that we are very passionate about at Global Victoria. And it's what programs like Future Founders are all about. So of course, the future is indeed female. It's also where gender and cultural diversity are recognised as drivers of business innovation and profitability. And international students are front and centre of that conversation with industry and employers. So I hope you can all participate in these amazing workshops, get involved in the industry training, the networking and the mentoring opportunities that Future Founders has to offer. It's a really exciting program and I'm thrilled to be a part of it. So it's my pleasure now to welcome Priyanka and Belle for today's Future Founders panel discussion. Thank you so much and all the very best.
Thank you so much, Fiona. Really excited to have Priyanka and Belle join us up next. Over to you both. Thank you also, Fiona. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Ingrid, and thank you, Fiona, for the lovely words. Global Victoria in Victorian Government truly have been a champion of international students and women leadership. And I'm just so happy to be here with you, celebrating women entrepreneurship and really learn about how do we take the first step to become a founder. So my name is Belle Lim. I am an international student from Malaysia. I'm currently serving as the president at the Council of International Students Australia. And I'm also the founder of Future Female, a space for ideas and conversations from international students and women of color that is supported by Study Melbourne. Today, we have an absolute treat for you. That is a conversation with Priyanka Ashraf. So Priyanka, why don't you start with telling us a little bit about your journey so far? So you were an international student yourself, just like many of our audience. Can you share with us some of the ups and downs that you had, and how did you discover your passion in social change, law, and entrepreneurship?
Sure. Belle, thank you, Belle. Before I get to answering your question, I too just wanted to quickly acknowledge the Wurundjeri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land from which we broadcast from today. And I pay my respects to all elders, past, present, and emerging. I extend that same respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are our guests today. So Belle, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to chat with you. Telling you about my journey, I guess there's the journey about me as an international student here, and there's the journey about growing the creative cooperative. So I'll start with the first one. I'm not going to tell you how long ago this was, because then you're going to know exactly how old I am, but let's just say a long time ago, I came to Australia and I was an international student here. I was studying law, and it was in my mind that 100%, that's a safe profession. That's where I'm really going to put all my efforts, and that's where my career is going to go. But as luck would have it, I found out about this little innovation club at my university called the University of Canberra. And it was part of this program called Innovation ACT. And that's when I started getting really interested around the whole idea of entrepreneurship and how do you start creating completely new roles. Like, what if you could have the dream job that you made up for yourself? Like, what could that look like? And so for me, that was literally starting my own little online boutique, which I ran from my dorm room. I literally ran it from there. And very quickly, I realized that, hang on a second, do I really want to keep going with this particular path, or do I want to just focus on this startup? And actually, after some thinking, I realized, no, you know what? Now is not the right time for me to build this, because I want to first have all of the skills in my toolbox so that when I do want to start my startup, I'm going to have all of that foundational skills ready to go. And so I guess for me, it wasn't necessarily the case that you couldn't do the same at the same time. So I kept studying, but at the same time, I kept a really close eye on what was happening in the innovation ecosystem overall. So, I went and practiced law for a few years. I found it pretty disenfranchising. I wasn't really happy with just how reactive it was. Like, you'd have a problem and then you're trying to solve it, but by the time you're trying to solve it, the damage is done. And, that didn't feel particularly empowering for me. And so I started pivoting away from law. I followed my interest in innovation and tech, and I somehow went down the blockchain rabbit hole, as you do, right? And I guess there is a very close distinction, because at the time, looking at law and looking at how elements of blockchain like smart contracts apply, that's kind of what started it for me. So I started going to meetups. I started going to events. I was literally subscribing for every single newsletter out there that related to startups, that related to meetups. I started meeting people. I started asking random people who I really respected to mentor me. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, they're sharing other opportunities with me. And that's actually how I came across my first big opportunity, which was to apply for a scholarship with MIT over in the US to actually learn about blockchain. It was an accelerator program. And so I went, I did that. And after that, like my life had completely shifted. I came back and I really made the decision. That's it. I've got some great skills that I picked up from my law degree, but I really want to apply it in tech. So I spent a bit more time working in, I actually spent a bit of time working in tech startups. I really enjoyed doing that. I worked across a different variety of roles. I worked across operations, community, marketing, growth hacking, strategy, sales. Like, I mean, you do everything in a startup, right? But then I also came to a point where I thought, just imagine if I had like really like big corporate experience, which I could then keep adding to my little toolbox. So then I went and worked at PwC for a few years. I joined their emerging technology team. And yeah, that was pretty interesting. I liked it. It definitely gave me a lot of the skills that now when I look in hindsight, it gave me a lot of the skills I needed eventually to run my own startup successfully. Yeah, so then from PwC, I then again went back to the startup ecosystem because I feel like once you get a taste of the startup ecosystem, like you never go back, right? You might go away for a bit, but you always come back. So then I joined this Ethereum infrastructure company called Consensus, and I was heading up their growth function in Australia, community and ecosystem growth, which I absolutely loved. And you know, like from there, like COVID-19 hit, and I guess now's where I guess we're getting to, you know, the part about how the creative cooperative came about. So COVID-19 hit, and you know, like everybody else, I started freaking out. What am I going to do with my career? What am I going to do? So I'm applying for jobs left, right, and center with like, you know, and competing against all of these other people who've been impacted by COVID-19 and the pandemic. And then, you know, I kept going and I kept getting knocked back. And I came to a point, and this, you know, like this for me, I guess this for me is when the penny really dropped, right? The penny dropped for me when I realized that maybe something is going wrong. Maybe I shouldn't keep applying for jobs. Like maybe I need to take a different route, and maybe I need to start my own thing.
This is incredible. What an incredible journey that you have taken so far and still continue to be on. I think what you mentioned about the ability to create change and taking ownership, it really is the attraction of entrepreneurship for many of us, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Was it daunting for you at that time to change your career path? I think that, you know, learning from your story, you have taken that a few times along the way. How did you make that decision? And can you share with us the aha moment that you had that led you to found the creative cooperative? What was the important insight or decision that really changed your outlook?
Yeah, sure. So I think like fundamentally, there's something quite, it's linked, like being an international student, like living in a foreign country. Number one, you've got to figure out the culture, and then you've got to figure out like, you've got to figure out the frameworks around how society and economy and opportunities and like you've got to figure all of that out, right? So I feel like whilst I was studying, in addition to figuring out law, I was also trying to figure out all of these other things that you don't necessarily like learn at uni unless you know where to look, right? And so for me, participating in all of these different innovation programs, for example, through my uni, but then also through the startup ecosystem, I think that's where I started absorbing this mindset around pivoting. So you start working on something, and if it doesn't really feel like it's working well, like, you know, if it's working well or not, I think, or maybe that's something that you need to develop as a skill set. Maybe that's something I developed as a skill set and other entrepreneurs develop as a skill set. But for me, you know, I'd keep like putting all my efforts into a particular area. And then I felt like, you know what, this isn't really driving value. And at that point I'd pivot, right? And so to everybody else who didn't come from this entrepreneurship background, they were just thinking, why do you keep changing your mind? Why can't you just stick to one thing, right? And I guess like rewind a few years, okay, maybe rewind like many years. And now it's like, well, if you're not moving and pivoting every few years, like, what are you doing, right? Because that's how innovation works. So I guess for me, I kept changing until I kind of went with where the value went, right? So for me, what I felt was value, I kept pivoting until I hit what felt like it was valuable. Now, in terms of when the aha moment for me was with the creative cooperative, it was literally, it was actually a deeply, deeply personal moment for me. So last year, I think a lot of people woke up during the murder of George Floyd, right? It was like this global wake up. And if I think about the impact of that on me, like someone who's like living a really, really far away place, I think a lot of us can, like, we all relate to this, right? It's almost like that was the moment where I realized, why do I keep applying for all of these jobs? Why am I keep competing? And maybe on the other end, the people who are making an assessment about my ability, they don't actually know how to do that. So why don't I figure out how to actually overcome that and create an entirely new way of working? Like, how about I just start my own company? And that is literally how the creative cooperative started. And it was seriously, there was no, grand plan. I feel like all of the other, like typically when you go through any incubator program, like there's so much theory, there's so much innovation theory. But literally it was my friend and I, who is also a former international student. She came here from Korea. And I'll actually tell you about her a little bit later, because we, like this time last year, we pitched the Future Founders Festival. We pitched at the competition and we came second place. And that was like our first money to do something and like start from there. But anyway, I guess it was literally her and I just thinking, okay, what are we able to do? What are our skills? Let's see if someone's actually going to pay for that. Like, is someone going to pay for our skills? Is someone going to pay for the services that we have? And that is literally how it started. We found one customer, we built them a website. They needed it done in 24 hours. Like, they already had someone else who was going to do it for them. And we said, we'll do it faster. And we did it in 24 hours. And they were like, that's amazing. I'm going to go tell all my other friends. And that is how it started. And, that was 9 months ago. But I guess just coming back to the point around, the Future Founders Festival and the competition, that $1,000 that we won, I think that paid for our ABN, that paid for us to actually like register our company.
This is such an incredible story. And I think that, everyone in the audience would be like me, thinking that this is such an incredible story that started from an idea, like you see a need and you just had an idea and you tried it. And here you are 9 months later and you're running a successful startup. And one thing that I picked up from your story is that you mentioned about the mindset of pivoting and adaptation. And I always say to international students, sometimes we find that sometimes we overlook the skills that comes with just being an international student. The learnings that we go through as an international student in a different country is incredible. We absorb, as you say, the mindset of resilience and adaptation and creativity. And this is crucial for the future of work. It is innovation, it is lifelong learning, and it might be a little bit different from our parents' time, but this is, the world that we live in now that really allow us to put this creativity to work. So I'm having a really great time listening to your story. I am aware that we might be running a little bit short of time, so we might go with some quick fire questions. So from your experience, what are some critical things that founders need to do when they take this exciting first step?
There's 3. So number 1, be aware of your strengths, play to your strengths. Number 2, be aware of your weaknesses. And don't do those. Like, figure out either how you outsource that to somebody else or to software, or maybe enough that you can do it just to like hack it together. But number 3, and this is one that we often don't talk about, is be aware of your barriers, right? So for example, I am very aware of my barriers as a woman. I'm aware of my barriers as a woman of color. I'm aware of there's so many different barriers. And I guess sometimes we don't really talk about these so openly. I think in recent times, we are talking more about intersectional identities and how that actually interacts. It interacts really closely with determining your path as a founder. So I would say those are my 3 key pieces of advice.
So knowing yourself and have a clear expectations of what you're going into. That's fantastic. So it is always a bit of a trial and error at the start. With the benefit of hindsight, is there anything that you would have done differently when you first started out?
Yeah, relax. I would relax. I mean, not relax too much, but I would relax about things like, like working at PwC, for example. If you have a client email or someone emails you, you reply in 12 hours max. Like, you don't reply later than that. So just relaxing from really rigid rules like that, I think that actually takes a lot of unnecessary stress when you already have a lot of stress trying to build a startup.
Yes. So does that also link to, for some of our audience that might feel like, I have to make a decision now, the degree that I'm studying now, I'm going to stick with this for the rest of my life. Would you also tell us to be relaxed?
Well, I actually started out in journalism and law, and then I switched to international studies and law, and then I was ready to drop law, and then I decided to stick it out. But the thing is, things will constantly keep changing, and the more we get used to the change, I think the more comfortable and the easier it's going to be for us to grow a successful, scalable startup.
Absolutely. And knowing that we're going to be okay regardless of
no matter what. Yep, 100%.
So this links to one of the audience question. This audience is curious. Did you end up finishing your law degree?
Yeah, I did. I finished my law degree. It was painful. I finished it. I practiced law. And then I felt, that I transferred all of the skills that I learned in law. I could still transfer into so many different areas, like whether you want to work in consulting and strategy, whether you want to run your own startup or your own business, it's a highly transferable skill set. And honestly, there are people who start out in completely different degrees and they can still end up running a startup, because a startup needs so many different skills. I think particularly, especially early stage startups, what they look for is proactivity and mindset. Literally, the rule is that everything else is trainable. Everything else is teachable.
Absolutely. It's all about the soft skills.
Yep.
So the next question is, as you know, the initiative that I run, Future Female, champions role models for young women from diverse cultures. And we understand how big the influence that role models can have on young people. Who do you look up to for inspiration or mentorship?
Yeah, I'm going to mention two. So Jira Lula, she's a Yorta and Wiradjuri woman, and she's the founder and director of Kalinya Communications. So she actually started Kalinya to share positive stories about her culture, and she really believes that the world would be a better place if more people knew, respected, and had access to Indigenous knowledge. So that's one, Jira. And then another one is Arlen Hamilton. So she's an African-American woman in the United States. She's a venture capitalist. And, for me, I just remember, I always come back to her statement, which is, it's not a problem. We're not underrepresented. We are underestimated. So this is something that I come back to all the time. And I feel like from both of these amazing leaders, I draw a lot of inspiration, and I'd really recommend everyone to look them up.
Well, certainly. And I'm sure that you are the role model for our audience today as well.
And yourself too, Belle.
Oh, thank you. So if anyone has any question that you want to give to Priyanka, please type into the Q&A box below. But from me, my last question is, what is one piece or multiple piece of practical advice that you want the audience to take away today, either for their career, their future business success, or personal advice?
It's funny that so everyone, along your path, you are going to meet so many people that are going to give you advice, and they're going to tell you, do it this way, do it that way. I mean, in fact, technically I'm giving you advice right now, but just remember that if anyone tries to give you advice, or if they are trying to assign a particular value, don't ever take it on unless that person actually has the expertise, the proven expertise to be giving you that advice. And to the value question, no one gets to set your value other than you. I think if you play to that one rule, whatever it is, whether it's your studies or employment or your startup, you will be unstoppable.
I love that. It's all about believing in yourself and the value that you can bring. So there is an audience question. So does Priyanka have any tips for international students to be brave enough to go out of our comfort zone, as we tend to stay in our network groups from our own countries?
Yeah, 100%. So for me, I definitely experienced this. And I actually started going to all of these different startup events. And the reason that startup events, startup community in particular, like they're literally, it doesn't really matter what their identities are per se. They might be from so many different countries. They might be from different cultures. They might be different genders, but they've all got that same interest, mindset, and hunger in problem solving. So what I would suggest is connect yourself with people like that, because they're the ones that are hungry to try new things and meet new people. So for me, like even the people that I met however many years back at the very start of my entrepreneurship journey, like today, however many years later, they remain my friends, mentors, clients, co-workers. So I would really, really suggest check out what startup events are happening near you and sign up for them all.
Well, that is fantastic advice. And that also boosts our cross-cultural competence that will, give us the ability for the future of workforce. Well, thank you so much for giving us your time today, Priyanka. Everyone really enjoyed listening to you. You are an inspiration for myself and our audience today.
Likewise, you too, Belle. Thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Belle and Priyanka. Wonderful discussion, and really appreciate you sharing, Priyanka and Belle. Thank you so much for bringing so many insights through that discussion. Now I am excited to introduce Sakshi Thakur, who is going to kick off our workshop. So everyone, a round of applause for Belle and Priyanka, and welcome, Sakshi.
Thanks so much, Ingrid. Welcome, everyone. And before I start, I also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that we are all dialing in from today, if you're from Australia, and pay my respects to all the elders, past, present, emerging, and any First Nations people listening to this right now. The other thing I want to acknowledge is that one of the greatest lessons that I feel like I had last year with COVID is that time is precious. So I just want to thank each and every one of you still here right now for your time. And my intention is to really make the most of that time and bring the greatest value that I can. So I'm hoping that at the end of this workshop, you can take something that's either inspiring, come out with like a great idea, a reflection point, or just have fun. And with that being said, what to expect for the rest of the workshop. So we will go through a little bit of a startup trivia just as an icebreaker. And then we'll go through what makes great ideas, do a big activity together as a cohort, and then go through one tool called the value proposition canvas. Before we start, hey, I'm Sakshi. My first business is the photo that you see on your top right with me and a baby. That baby is my younger brother, and we were both born in Kuwait. And in Kuwait, we don't have houses, we have apartment buildings. So that particular year, my mum deprived me of chocolate. And when my brother was born, he had a really cute face. And I just put two and two together. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm just going to pitch my brother being like the cutest baby in the world to all of my friends and tell them that if they wanted to visit and meet my brother, they have to bring chocolate to my house. And so that one particular year, I ate a lot of chocolate. But then my brother grew older. He wasn't as cute anymore. So it was a failed business model, and I learned a lot. And then my second business was the one underneath that photo, which is of me and a laptop in Oman. So in Oman, which is where we migrated, having a laptop and a colored printer is such a privilege. So what I would do is I would go to school, ask my friends, is there like a picture that you wish you had in your room? I would take note, come home, Yahoo image all of those and print them out for them and give it to them at lunchtime. And then they would give me a quarter of their lunch money, and I would collect all of that and buy myself some chips. The reason I go through these two examples is because for a long time, I used to think that I'm not made for business or startups. But in those two examples, I had some form of value exchange, which by default means that I can build a business if I wanted to, which I did now. But for anyone out there that thinks that, I might not be capable of building a business, I hope that you can take some form of like a reflection point of when are some times that I've created value exchange, because I'm sure you have. And if you have, then you are so capable of building a business if that's something you venture out to do. Since that point, I've learned a lot. So then we migrated to Australia. I studied biomedicine and commerce at Monash. And then I worked at EY in finance. After that, I did a master's at Melbourne Business School, built my first tech startup. I raised some seed funding for it, got some VC funding offers, and I decided not to take them. I then went back to India, which is where my family's from, to figure out what's next for me. And then I built my current social enterprise, which is called Humanism Global. And we work with women from low socioeconomic backgrounds in a small town called Pondicherry. And we give them dignified textiles education and then employment at this big centre that we now have. And the way that we give them employment is by selling event merchandise to big corporates in Australia. So the women make lanyards and tote bags and commercial t-shirts with other company logos. So yeah, this is a picture of all the women I am so privileged to get to work with. Okay, cool. Now to get into some trivia. So how this is going to work is on your screens, you should see a little poll pop up. If you don't, just let us know in the Q&A. But essentially what you'll see is 3 questions, and we're going to go through these 3 trivia questions. The intention of this is to get to know some of the businesses we're familiar with, but also have a bit of fun, because trivia is always fun. So I'll quickly go through each question and only give you 5 seconds to answer them. So don't overthink the responses, go with your gut feel, and I won't even know if you got them right or wrong. So don't feel like you have to worry about that. So the first question is, which startup sold Obama O's and Captain McCain cereal to fund their startup? So now we're just going to have like an awkward 5-second moment. So I'll let you guys to answer those questions. Cool. Next question. Which one of the following was Apple's first logo? Is it A, the black and white picture, B, the rainbow apple, C, the blue apple, or D, the black apple? And the last question is, which startup / business was founded during the 2008 recession? Is it A, Alibaba, B, Dropbox, C, Uber Eats, or D, Groupon? Ooh. I'm going to give you guys 10 more seconds to answer these questions. I'll put it to the Airbnb slide so you guys can have a look at the logos while you're answering the other 2 questions. Cool. All right. I'm going to end the trivia in 3, 2, 1. Done. All right. Let's see what everyone put down. Okay. Can I share results? Ooh, awesome. Okay. So I think you can see everyone's results. Ooh, a lot of people said A. Well, the answer to this question is actually C. Airbnb was the startup that sold Obama O's and Captain McCain cereal to fund their startup. So being a bed and breakfast startup, they had a lot of debt in the early days. And so what they did is they actually got Kellogg's cereal, or just like some cereal packet, got rid of the box and just replaced their actual cereal into their customized box. And so because the election was going on at that time, they could sell that cereal box for a lot more money because people were just buying that. And so they were able to pay off a lot of their debts during the early startup days through the cereal box. And I think that's a really good example of how you can be creative with your ideas when you are building a business if you decide to go down that path. Ooh, okay. So we had a lot of people say B for this one. You know, I thought it was B too, but it's actually A. A was the first logo. And if you can't see it on your laptop, it's actually like a person against a tree with a real apple and this massive like flash around it. So that was the first one. And then the second logo is the colorful one. So B is pretty close. And then the third one is C. And then the fourth logo, which is what we see now, is D. Okay, and so for this one, we had a bit of a mixed bag, but most people got this one right. It's Groupon. So Alibaba was 1999. Dropbox was like a year before the recession, so that was like a trick question. That was 2007. Uber Eats was much later, so that was 2014, and Groupon was the 2008 one. Awesome stuff, guys. I'm going to stop sharing the poll. Cool. All right, we'll get into the workshop now. So what is a good idea? I think the best quote that describes what a good idea is this one by a really famous partner from one of the best accelerators in the world called Y Combinator. And that is, the way to get startup ideas is not to try and think of startup ideas, it's to look for problems, preferably problems you have yourself. When I was starting off, I remember I used to just jump to ideas that sounded cool and creative, and I would have to literally pause and remind myself that some of these ideas are not solving a problem, therefore there's no purpose to those ideas. So what I hope you take away from this is next time you have a really great idea, just ask yourself the question, what is the problem I'm solving with this idea? Just to bring some light into that, I'm going to try and use the chat function. Someone says volume is low. Okay, I'm going to put my volume a little bit higher. Can someone give me a thumbs up on the chat to let me know that the volume is okay? And if it's not, just let me know and I will change that. Okay, I'm going to assume it's okay. Cool, all right. Well, let's still use the chat function. Oh, thanks, Cheryl. Thanks for doing that. I'm going to still use the chat function. And I know sometimes it can be uncomfortable to put yourself out there, but we're all virtual, so I can't even see you. And I really encourage that you challenge yourself and go outside your comfort zone if this is not something you usually like to do, and actually use the chat function if you can. So to start off, I would love for someone to describe to me if they know what Tinder is or what the app does. Okay, if no one does, it's all good. I'll talk through Tinder. Tinder is online dating app. Thanks, Tara. Swipe left, swipe right, love it. Dating app, online dating, love it. Thank you so much, guys. It is an online dating app. You swipe right if you like it, swipe left if you don't like the person, and hopefully you meet someone on the app. Now, the person standing in front of this picture is Whitney Hurd, who's one of the co-founders of the particular app. But she left Tinder because she experienced sexual harassment in the tech industry at that time. And she also recognized that a lot of underrepresented people using the app, and at that time it was women, people of color, also reported sexual harassment, but Tinder didn't do much about it and it conflicted with her values. So she decided to step away and leave. But as she left, she also faced a lot of scrutiny from the tech industry. And she felt like there was a lack of tools and kindness to empower women in the tech industry. And so she used that problem that she was facing as the problem she wanted to solve going forward. So what she did after that, after she defined the problem that she wanted to work on after Tinder, was create this platform called Messi. Now, Messi was a platform just for women, by women, and the intention was for women to empower each other through networking, complimenting each other, and that wasn't like superficial compliments. It was more compliments around personality and intellect. And it was her first idea that she worked on with that problem. Her next idea was this other dating app called Bumble. And so Bumble is a dating app which also has the intention of empowering women through technology. And the way that they do it is if you match someone, the female party gets to make the first move. And so the point I'm trying to make with this particular slide is that you can have multiple ideas addressing the same problem. What really matters is this fact that you need to get your problem defined first. And then all the ideas that come after that, even if they change, that's all fine. Like Priyanka said, you always keep iterating, you always keep pivoting, and that's all part of the process. All right, and now it's your turn. So we're going to try and use one of these other tech tools to get you guys to go through an ideation activity. Ooh, I've jumped ahead. How we're going to do this is if you guys have any phone, whether that's an iPhone or an Android, and if you can take a picture of that QR code on the screen, or alternatively, you can just use your web browser that you're on and type in that particular link and put in that code being the roadshow. I'm going to quickly just stop sharing screen and put up the QR code for you guys. Give me 1 second. Cool. So yeah, if you missed the previous slide, just take a photo of the QR code. You should get it straight on your phone, or alternatively, put in the website and put in the roadshow as your code, and you should get this question. What I'm going to get you guys to do in a moment is I'm going to give you 3 minutes, so one Sam Smith song. And what we're going to do is come up with as many ideas as we can to address this particular problem as a team. And now any idea you put out here, it's going to be anonymous, so don't feel like you have to hold back. But this is an activity that we can do together as a cohort and come up with as many ideas as we can. The more ideas that we can come up with, the better. And who knows who's watching this, that might become a reality. So with that being said, I'm going to put in a Sam Smith song and give us exactly 3 minutes. Oh, I love it. Provide a social matching service for students to study and hang out, like a Tinder for hanging out with friends. Really cool.
Guess it's true, I'm looking at a one-night stand. But I still need love, cause I'm just a man. These nights never seem to go to plan. I don't want you to leave, will you hold my hand?
Oh, I love that. Live chat with the support staff that matches their language choice to share their problems.
Cause you're all I need.
Establish an online community which allows students to share study experiences as an international student.
Darling,
So great.
stay with me.
Markets or fairs to share culture. Yes.
Why am I so emotional?
Provide social functions. Ooh, I'm really sensing like a big community vibe here.
Deep down,
Mental health support groups for international students. Super important. Love it.
you can lay
Skills through employability, support through paid internships and coaching. Super important.
Stay.
Online groups and activities that they can join when they're on
Cause
quarantine. Yes, that's a very good one. Organize targeted events for job seekers and employers. Really important.
clear.
An app that's like a virtual breakout mystery room, leading them to place closer to their likes and preferences to meet international students with the same likes and interests. Yes, really thought that one out for a bit. Love it.
Cause you're all I need.
All right, I'll give you guys 10-15 more seconds. Oh, entrepreneurship class. Yes. Skills, building for careers, job interviews, resume, business. Love. Use music to socialize. Yes, definitely. Hopefully this music is helping you socialize. Career talks or job placements. Oh, that's the end of the song. Thank you so much for everyone that contributed to these ideas. They're all amazing. In-person meetups at their own countries for those who are stuck and can't come back to Australia yet. Huge one, definitely. I mean, when this comes out on LinkedIn or wherever the platform is, definitely comment and hopefully like figure out a way that you guys can make this happen. Awesome. Online meeting. Love it. Thank you so much. I'm going to have to stop sharing, but these were such great ideas. And I just want to thank each and every one of you that did contribute. It does mean a lot. Cool. Well, I'll just quickly get back to the slides. Screen share. Again, thank you so much for that, guys. That was really, really great. And the purpose of that is just to remind you that there's no such thing as a bad idea. Every idea is amazing and has so much potential. It's just defining the problem, and you guys did an awesome job. So really, thank you. Now we're going to talk through something called value proposition. So value proposition is essentially like a summary of the value you provide through your product or service to your stakeholders. And your stakeholders are people like the people using your app, or your customers, or your beneficiaries, so the people you're impacting, etc. So some examples are, so this is Tim Fung, who's the founder of Airtasker. Does anyone, actually, I'll just go through it. So Airtasker is a startup that you can put a job that you want to get done on, or you can also accept a job that you think you can do for some payment. And the value proposition for Airtasker, for example, is high skilled people and earn extra money today. So it's that one summary of like the value they're providing. Another example is this one called Canva, and the founder of Canva is, one of the founders of Canva is Melanie Perkins. And they're essentially like a platform that you can get all kinds of creative assets like graphic designing, brochures, posters, etc. And their little value proposition is everything your team needs to make amazing content. For someone who doesn't have a background in graphic design or any form of design, that's literally like the value it provides for me. So they've got this like really concise value proposition / statement of value that they provide. But how they get there, there are just so many tools. And one of the tools is this thing called the value proposition canvas. Now I'm going to go through an example of how you, a company, or you, a founder of a company, might use the value proposition canvas. So the circle is usually the customer, and the square is you, the business or your platform or your service. So the circle, I'm going to use me, Sakshi, as an example to go through this. So pretend Airbnb is using the value proposition canvas, and the type of customer I am is a customer that's looking for a place to rent. So I'm not the person that's renting my space. I'm the person that is traveling and is looking for a place to rent. So we'd start with a job to be done. So Airbnb would ask themselves, what is the job that Sakshi, the customer, wants to get done? Sakshi, the customer, being me, wants to just find a place that I can book a place to rent. A platform, I can book a place to rent. That is literally what I need to get done. Then Airbnb would ask, what would make Sakshi, our customer, happy? So what benefits is Sakshi looking for during this process of booking a place? So for me, it's cheaper accommodation because I'm all about saving money. For me, it's a local experience rather than the hotel experience. And also like the flexibility to change dates because I love traveling and not having a plan. So then Airbnb would ask, okay, what troubles you, Sakshi, in doing this job? Like what are the things that prevent you from getting that job done quickly? So for me, it's safety concerns because I travel in these new areas and don't know enough about it. So I'm always worried about safety and whether different areas have different safety concerns I should be aware of. And then the second thing is, I don't know how I feel about living with strangers sometimes. It's just like a due diligence process I have to go through. So Airbnb would just listen to me, the customer, and all my concerns, all the things that would make me happy, and then make sure that their platform addresses all those things. So on the right, on the square, we have this thing called the game creators. And what they've done is they've created a platform that gives me, exotic and home-like spaces. So I have all these options. It gives me the price range option so I can pick the cheap accommodation for myself. Also gives me the flexibility. And then it's got the pain relievers. So things like the review option, so I can actually have more confidence and assurance that this person I'm staying with may be a stranger, but they're a great stranger to live with because I've read reviews from other people who've enjoyed their time with them. It can be the vetting of hosts. It can be the guarantee of quality accommodation. So all of these things in the pain relievers box on the left are things that are alleviating the stress that comes with safety for me or the quality of accommodation for me. So this is just an example with Airbnb. And so to bring that all to life, in the early days, the value they were adding to their customers is this list on the left. And therefore, the value proposition was book rooms with locals rather than hotels for customers like myself. And so the reason that's the value proposition is because in the early days, they realized that the greatest value add that they were having was the local experience. They just really hounded down on that value prop. And then for hosts, which is the other customer segment, and if I was Airbnb, I would do a whole other value proposition for hosts because they've got different needs. But on the left is a list of value that they add to hosts. And so their value proposition was really the earn extra income and unlock new opportunities by sharing your space, because the income generation part was the real value add for hosts. Awesome. Well, this is a screen that I just left there for anyone that wants to take a screenshot, but all of these slides will get sent to you anyway. So if this is a tool that you want to use in the future, know that this is available for you and to you. But that's it for me. That's a wrap, but I will open the space for any questions. If anyone had any, feel free to just add them in the chat box. And while I'm waiting for some questions, I just want to thank everyone for your time again. I do really appreciate it. And I hope you took something away from this workshop. So I'm going to leave it to you guys. If you guys have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. But if not, I will hand it over to Ingrid to talk about next steps.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Sakshi. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed the session and I really enjoyed that trivia. Lots of surprising answers there, especially the Apple logo, which Sakshi, I believe that is a drawing of Isaac Newton with the apple above his head, like hitting him on the head, and the theory of relativity, I suspect. Oh, we've actually got a question, Sakshi, from the audience. Not so much about the workshop, but sharing a bit more about your story as a founder. So we've got a question: what has been your greatest challenge since going out on your own with your own business?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I did start in the industry being EY, and being a person of color, it's definitely something that my parents and community thought was necessary to have stability and security, which came from working in industry. So going on my own meant that I didn't have that stability or security. And so the greatest challenge is convincing people that what you're working on is worthwhile, despite the fact that you don't have the security and stability. And so I think the challenge was less that I was okay with it and more being okay that other people didn't understand it. But what did also help is having seed funding, such as the one that this program can potentially provide for founders out there, to give me that security and stability that I needed to just survive and work on the idea that I wanted to. So the greatest challenge is really just backing yourself, getting security and stability, and being okay with the fact that other people don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, but you do, and that's all that matters. So that's a really great question. Thank you.
Sakshi, just on that as well, did you start Humanism Global as a side hustle? So you're still working in your career, being employed, still able to pay your rent because you had a wage coming in, but did you start your side hustle while you're still working?
I didn't. I started my side hustle full-time, went all in. So Humanism Global, I went all in for a short period of time because I knew how much money I had left to survive for that short period of time if I went full time. And then I got a consulting job to work on it part-time, and then also have consulting bring in some money for me. However, I also went through multiple accelerators and got some seed funding through that in order to support myself, but also support the growth of the business to get to where it is today.
Yeah, really fascinating to hear that and to understand the process of you planning to set yourself up to make sure you could back yourself and didn't have to worry, from day one about funding, but had a plan to bring some more funding in. Has anyone got any other questions for Sakshi? Otherwise, I will chat to everyone about the next steps. So thank you, everyone, for coming to today's event. And thank you again to Sakshi for that amazing session. I hope everyone following along at home got a lot of value out of the workshop. And also I'd like to say a big thanks to our special guests, Fiona Letos, Priyanka Ashraf, and Belle Lim as well. We really appreciate your contribution. And to our virtual audience as well, we appreciate you showing up and learning with us here today. So what's next after this? As Fiona mentioned, there's a lot coming ahead for the Future Founders program. We have an exciting program rolling out across the whole year. So we are inviting you to get inspired, grow your capabilities and build your networks at the Future Founders Festival this July, which is going to be in person and also with some virtual offerings. And then beyond that, take the next step and commit to your business with our intensive boot camps later in the year. And then finally, get funding and mentoring you need with our Venture Scholarship program. So please head to the website up on the screen there, startspacehq.com/Future Founders to find out more and see what's coming up in the Future Founders program presented by Study Melbourne and StartSpace. So that is all for us today. We look forward to seeing you again soon, and thank you so much for joining us. And I'd like to also ask everyone to give Sakshi a little virtual round of applause, some reactions in the chat, and also I think a big round of applause to everyone for showing up and being here. Well done, everyone.